Hi, Adam Blumber with Protocol Wealth here again, and we're going to talk a little bit today about custody. We've been fielding some custody questions from clients and from prospects and from partners, especially around a recent exploit or hack in a relatively prominent hard wallet. And so I want to talk a little bit about self-custody. Obviously, it's something that has come back into vogue with crypto. It was something that was available. It was what we saw in the, I'll say, early 1900s, late 1800s, when self-custody of something like stock. If you had GE stock, it's because you physically held the GE stock certificates. And then we went away from self-custody. And now we're back to it. But what I want to talk a little bit about some custody issues. Now remember, everything I'm telling you is not necessarily financial advice for you. This is just for educational purposes. It's just talking about how we think about it, but it doesn't mean that it's financial advice for you. If you need to think about how you want to custody your digital assets, then you need to talk to your financial advisor, your CPA, or your attorney. So now we're going to talk about the illusion of absolute self-custody. So something like self-custody, if I say I'm going to hold my own keys, I'm going to hold my own Bitcoin, or I'm going to hold my own ETH or DeFi or whatever it might be, it definitely eliminates some risk. It does not eliminate trust. It just changes where that trust and responsibility sits. There is no risk-free custody model. So what are the risks that are hiding in self-custody? Obviously, you have some hardware vulnerabilities and firmware defects. Seed generation weaknesses, that's what we've seen recently. You might have incomplete backups, incomplete seed phrases. You could have physical theft or coercion. We've heard about wrench attacks where those that have significant amount of assets in a hardware wallet get physically attacked to give up their seed phrases. You could have phishing or malicious transaction signing. You could have loss or incapacity or death of the person who actually holds the keys, and therefore the hard wallet and the self-custody you wanted doesn't necessarily conform with your estate planning wishes. And you could have operational mistakes if you're completely in charge. So again, you're shifting the trust and the responsibility completely to yourself. Now, what have we learned recently? What we've learned is that even if those that are implementing self-custody, full self-custody, are doing everything right, they write down their seed phrase, they back it up, they put it into a safe deposit box or something, they never connect their hardware wallet to a computer that's connected to the internet that they don't trust. All of those things, and there was still a problem. We're still going to see, I think, more of these types of issues with the advent of potentially quantum computing, with more AI tools that can brute force attack some of these wallets and some of their security. So we're going to see a little bit more of this. So what we've learned, again, this is not me railing against self-custody. I think it's important, and I think there's a place for it. What it means is everyone has a different custody solution, and you might not only have one custody solution for your digital assets, it will likely be multiple custody solutions, and that's what we look at for clients. So we can compare kind of this spectrum of custody. There is full single key self-custody. You're the only one with the key, the backup, the seed phrase, where you have complete autonomy and control, but you also have complete responsibility for what happens. There's multisig, of course, where you have more than one person with their own key, and you can set what the transaction limits are. You can set what happens with those assets, how many people have to sign, and it allows for a little bit more estate planning. It allows for a little bit more control, but you still have multiple people with keys, and you could still have those same issues around key generation and hardware and everything. You have MPC wallets, which is multi-party computation wallets, which basically takes that key and divides it among different signers. That's something we use Protocol Wealth for many of our clients, is MPC wallet technology that allows us to have some level of control without fully taking custody. And remember, in this case, an MPC doesn't tell you who has custody, it just tells you who has signing authority for various pieces. You can build in certain policies. Remember, this is just software built on top of software built on top of software, and MPC technology gives you, as an owner of assets, still that idea of self-custody. It's yours, but you don't necessarily have 100% of the responsibility. And then, of course, there's qualified custody. Now, qualified custody isn't necessarily a type of custody. It is more regulatory in nature. It is, here are the rules that says someone is a qualified custodian. So a qualified custodian could use multisig wallets. They could use MPC wallets. But what they are is, one, they've been given this license by the government, and two, they generally have insurance, they generally have more policies and procedures in place, they have more institutional money usually, and so there is some degree of safety there. But then, of course, you give up some of that idea of self-custody sometimes, and you say someone else has the keys, so I'm relying on them to be as secure as possible. So you have to do your homework. So remember, there are all these different forms of custody along the spectrum. So we go through these kind of 8 pillars of custody evaluation. What is the purpose of the assets? If I have digital assets, if I have crypto, what am I using them for? Am I just holding them for good? Am I staking them? Am I participating in DeFi? Am I actually trading, or am I sending them back and forth? Am I actually using stable coins or something, and therefore that's why? So we kind of go through that idea of, do you need to use this? Do you need access? Do you need to trade? Those kinds of things. Are you holding spending money in your wallet versus are you holding something that you're going to keep for a long time? Is this money you need to spend next week, or is this money you're going to spend in a few months or a year? How frequently do you have to transact, and how quickly do you have to be able to transact? If you're trading routinely and you know at any point you might have to get into the market or get out of the market, that's pretty quick. If you say, look, I'm rebalancing once a quarter, that's a whole lot different. What are the failure points that you feel comfortable with? Do you feel comfortable with yourself being a failure point? Do you feel comfortable with an institutional qualified custodian being that failure point? Is it a rogue employee? Let's go through what the risks are and where those failure points could be that leads someone else to be able to get into your wallet or into your vault and access your money and move it off chain or move it into their own wallet. We also want to think about governance. If you're a business, or even if you're an individual with a family, and this is family wealth, who can initiate transactions, who can approve them, who can execute them? That's what we see also in the financial planning world, is as we're managing for clients, there are different ways we can set up policies to where we as the advisor can initiate, or we can execute, and someone else has to approve it. So therefore we don't have full control, but we have enough control to manage. What happens if you're gone? What happens if you die? What happens if you become incapacitated? What happens if you lose your seed phrase? Let's walk through those situations. What kind of risk are you willing to take on the providers? Do they have any sort of insurance? What is the ongoing maintenance, looking at all the different wallets and where your money is and what makes sense? And is it something that you're going to look at regularly? So something that we think about is a hybrid custody framework, meaning your digital assets can be custodied in more than one way. Not every asset needs to be held in the same place or secured in the very same way. You can have qualified custody for a portion of your holdings, maybe if you want them held long term, if you're going to hold them for a while, if you trust the institution, if you trust the government, then you can say, look, I just want my assets to go up. If I want to participate in DeFi, if I want to participate in options, if I want to be able to borrow against them, if I want to be able to write covered calls or something, then we look at different custodial frameworks. Some of that has to be done or should be done in qualified custody. Some of it can be done in an MPC format if you really want to participate in DeFi more. There can be some self-custody applications, especially if you're someone who's nomadic and you have to move around, or if you live in a place where you're worried about the government and what control they can have over the banks and those regulated institutions. Then we see where self-custody can work. So it makes sense if you have significant wealth in the digital asset world to actually have multiple custody frameworks. So the next step for anyone who has a decent amount of assets, and a decent amount or a significant amount is different for every person, for every family, is to really evaluate what the risks are. What risks are you willing to take? What risks do you have with full self-custody, with an MPC situation, with a multisig situation, with qualified custody, and where are you willing to trade off some of those risks for the benefits you get of that particular type of custody. And of course, if you ever want to ask us, if you want to talk about it with your financial advisor that knows about it, with your CPA, with your attorney, or with us at Protocol Wealth, we would love to discuss it with you.